Willowbrook. The name itself hung over the town like a shroud, a promise of coldness and decay. It wasn't just the old hospital on the hill. It was a presence, a stain on the very soul of the place. People didn't talk about it, not if they could help it. They'd look away, a shadow crossing their faces, and speak of other things. But everyone knew. Everyone felt the darkness that seeped from its crumbling walls. I was young and foolish then, or perhaps just desperate. A night guard at Willowbrook. The job paid well and I needed the money. I told myself the stories were just stories, meant to scare children. But the moment I stepped inside, the air itself changed. It was heavy, stagnant, and carried a scent I can only describe as old death and madness. The building was a maze of long, twisting hallways. The paint peeled in strips from the walls, revealing the sickly yellow plaster beneath. Moonlight, fractured and weak, filtered through the grimy windows, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with every step I took. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional drip of water or the scuttling of unseen things in the darkness. My rounds took me through the abandoned wards. The rooms were small, each one a tomb holding the echoes of suffering. Iron beds lined the walls, many with thick leather straps still fastened to them. Restraint chairs, their purpose chillingly clear, stood in corners, facing blank, staring walls. I tried not to imagine the screams that had once filled those rooms, the struggles against those restraints. In the center of the asylum was the rotunda, a large circular room with a high, domed ceiling. Moonlight streamed through a shattered skylight, illuminating the dust motes that swirled in the air like lost souls. The rotunda was always the coldest part of the building, a place where the temperature dropped suddenly and the feeling of being watched intensified. One night, the whispers started. It began subtly, a faint rustling at the edge of hearing. I dismissed it as the wind, the old building settling. But it grew, becoming clearer, more insistent. It was like a chorus of voices, too low to understand, but filled with a terrible longing, a desperate plea. The whispers led me to the West Wing, a section of the asylum that was supposedly sealed off. The hallways here were narrower, the darkness thicker. The air smelled worse here, a mix of decay and something else, something acrid and metallic that made my stomach churn. The sound came from the last room on the left. A heavy metal door, its surface scarred and scratched, barred my way. It was locked, secured with a rusted padlock and a heavy chain. I put my ear to the cold metal. The whispers were a cacophony now, a jumble of voices crying out in pain and terror. And then I heard a single voice, clear above the others. A woman's voice, weak but laced with a chilling anger. "Let me out. Please, let me out. I'm still here. I'm still here." My blood ran cold. No one should have been in that wing. It had been sealed for years after what happened. The stories said it was where the worst of them had been kept, the ones beyond help, beyond hope. My hand trembled as I unlocked the padlock, the rusted metal protesting with a grating screech. I pulled at the chain, the heavy links clanging in the suffocating silence. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a vortex. I opened the door. Darkness. A darkness so complete it felt like a physical presence, pressing against me, stealing my breath. I shined my flashlight into the room. the beam cutting a feeble swathe through the gloom. The room was small, bare. A single iron bed stood in the corner, its mattress stained and rotting. In the center of the room, a figure sat on the floor. She was still, her back to me. Her hair was long, black, and tangled, cascading down her back like a shroud. It moved slightly as if alive. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. The figure didn't move. The whispers died down, leaving an unnerving silence in their wake. Then, slowly, deliberately, she began to turn. Her face was pale, inhumanly so. Her skin stretched taut over her bones, giving her an almost skeletal appearance. Her eyes were large, black, and empty. They didn't reflect the light of my flashlight. They seemed to absorb it, swallowing it into an endless void. And then she smiled. It was a grotesque distortion of a human expression, a pulling back of lips to reveal yellowed, pointed teeth. It was a smile of hunger, of malice, of a predatory glee that chilled me to the core. "You let me out," she said. Her voice was like the scraping of metal on stone, a sound that grated against my very soul. "Now we can play." She rose to her feet, her movements fluid and unnatural, like a puppet controlled by unseen strings. Her limbs bent at angles that no human body should allow. She moved towards me, her long, thin fingers twitching, reaching. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just ran. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet, desperate to escape the horror that was unfolding before me. The woman laughed, a high-pitched, shattering sound that echoed through the asylum, bouncing off the walls and chasing me like a physical force. The whispers were back, too, louder now, a chorus of insane voices urging her on, promising her what? I didn't want to know. I ran through the labyrinthine hallways, the darkness pressing in on me, the shadows twisting into grotesque shapes that mirrored the terror in my mind. I could hear her behind me, her footsteps light and quick, impossibly so. She was gaining on me. I burst through the front doors of the asylum, the cold night air a shock to my lungs. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I drove until the asylum was a distant silhouette against the dark horizon. I didn't look back. I never went back to Willowbrook. I quit the next morning, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen to sign the papers. The money wasn't worth it. Nothing could ever be worth what I saw, what I heard. But even now, years later, the memories haunt me. The whispers still echo in my dreams. The woman's face still flashes before my eyes. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind howls around my house, I swear I can hear her laughter, like breaking glass, carried on the wind. I know she's still there, in the darkness of Willowbrook, waiting for someone else to open the door, waiting to play. The rain hammered the roof of the car like 1,000 tiny fists. Ian leaned forward, squinting at the winding forest road. The wipers thrashed uselessly, barely clearing the stormy blur ahead. He shouldn't have taken this shortcut. That's what the old gas station guy had said, half smiling. Not many folks go that way at night, son. Best stick to the highway. But Ian, late and stubborn, had ignored the warning. Suddenly, something flashed in the headlights. A woman, white dress, pale face, darting across the road. Ian slammed the brakes. The tires screamed, skidding on wet gravel, and the car pitched violently into the ditch. For a few stunned seconds, he just sat there, heart pounding. Rain dripped down the cracked windshield. Slowly, trembling, he opened the door, stepping into the storm. The forest loomed around him, black and dripping. No sign of the woman, just trees, their branches swaying like skeletal arms. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. And was that a faint whispering? A flash of lightning lit up the woods. For a split second, Ian saw her, standing among the trees, pale face watching. And then darkness swallowed her whole. He ran. Branches clawed at his arms. Mud sucked at his shoes. There, a faint light ahead, cabin half hidden by the trees. With a desperate breath, Ian stumbled to the porch, pounding on the door. No answer. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, shadows twisted across peeling walls. The air smelled old, of damp wood, mildew, and something else. Something rotting. He called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" Only silence. His flashlight flickered as he stepped inside, the boards groaning under his weight. Something moved at the edge of the light. A figure huddled in a corner. Ian froze, heart hammering. Slowly, the figure raised its head. A woman, long hair draped over her face. "Help me," she whispered, voice paper thin. But as Ian took a step closer, her head snapped up, revealing a face hollowed by shadows, black eyes that devoured the light. She let out a wail that shook the walls. He stumbled back, crashing into a table. The lantern toppled, spilling light across old, yellowed newspapers. Headlines screamed, "Mother and child vanish in woods. Cabin of sorrows claims another." A sudden thump upstairs. Ian's breath hitched. Slowly, he crept up the rotting staircase, each step creaking underfoot. The door at the end of the hall was ajar, a faint sobbing leaking through. Inside, a little girl sat on the floor, hugging a cracked porcelain doll. She looked up at Ian with tear-streaked cheeks. "She's angry," the girl whispered. "She won't let us leave." Suddenly, the room went icy cold. Ian's breath misted in the air. Behind him, the woman's voice hissed, "You shouldn't be here." He spun, but the hallway was empty. Then, a violent force slammed him into the wall. Lights burst behind his eyes. The last thing he saw before blacking out was the girl reaching toward him, whispering, "Run." When Ian woke, the house was dark, silent. His head throbbed. Gritting his teeth, he stumbled downstairs, but the front door was gone. Only a solid wall remained, as if it had never existed. The girl appeared again, pale and trembling. "There's another way," she whispered. "Follow me." She led him through a hidden door, down crumbling steps into a cold, stone basement. The basement was lined with old toys, small shoes, faded drawings on the walls. Ian's stomach twisted. How many had come here before him? How many had never left? They found a tunnel, narrow and damp, cutting under the house. As they crawled, the woman's shrieks echoed behind them, rattling the earth. She was coming. Bursting out into the forest, Ian grabbed the girl's hand. Branches whipped past as they ran. The woman's scream following, closer, closer. Almost there. the girl cried, pointing ahead. They reached the old grave. Ian dropped to his knees, scraping dirt aside. The girl's name was carved faintly on the stone. Lily. Tears blurred his vision. He understood now. She was trapped. The woman wouldn't let her rest. The woman emerged, her face twisted in rage, black eyes burning. She reached for Ian, claws of mist and shadow. But Lily stepped between them, lifting her small hand. "Mommy," she whispered, "it's time." The woman's face crumbled, sorrow flooding her expression. With a final, echoing wail, her form dissolved into mist, curling away into the night. As dawn broke, the rain eased into a soft drizzle. Ian sat by the grave, exhausted. Lily's spirit smiled gently before fading, her small hand waving goodbye. Footsteps crunched behind him. A search party, worried faces, flashlights cutting through the dawn mist. "We've been looking all night," someone cried. Ian rose unsteadily, wrapped in blankets, barely believing he was safe. As they led him back, Ian glanced once more at the forest. For a heartbeat, he saw her, Lily, standing at the edge, smiling softly. And then she was gone, like the last curl of mist in the morning light. Months later, on a rainy night, Ian sat by his window. He watched the raindrops chase each other down the glass, listening to the soft patter. And sometimes, just sometimes, he thought he heard a little girl's laughter on the wind. Old Victorian house loomed, a silhouette against the bruised twilight sky. Its gables clawed at the clouds, and rusted iron gates groaned a welcome that felt more like a warning. Emma, 13 and perpetually unimpressed, glared from the car window. "I hated visiting Grandma when she was alive. Now we actually live here." Her mother, Sarah, sighed, her fingers tightening on a tarnished brass key. "The lawyer said she left us everything, Emma. Every single thing, including this charming abode." The word charming hung in the damp air, heavy with unspoken dread. The house felt less like an inheritance and more like a sentence. Inside, the foyer swallowed the last vestiges of daylight. It smelled like funeral flowers, old dust, and something vaguely metallic. Emma's sneakers stuck to the ornate hardwood. Were those sticky handprints near the baseboards? Small, almost childish. "Probably just old polish," Sarah said, her voice a little too quick, a little too loud. Unpacking was a chore, each box echoing in the cavernous rooms. Grandma's belongings were everywhere. Dusty porcelain dolls with vacant stares, antique rocking chairs that seemed to sway on their own, and countless framed photographs of stern-faced ancestors. Emma found herself constantly glancing over her shoulder. The first night, sleep was impossible. The house groaned, whispered, and settled. Emma heard a soft, rhythmic scratching from inside her closet. She told herself it was just mice, or the old house expanding and contracting. But the sound persisted, a tiny, insistent scraping. Finally, she grabbed her phone, flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. The scratching stopped. The closet was empty, save for Grandma's old fur coat, hanging limply. But then, Emma saw them. 3 words, freshly carved into the inside of the closet door, just above the floorboards. Asterisk, she misses you. Asterisk, A week later, the incidents escalated. Emma woke to a chilling whisper right next to her ear, so clear it could have been her own thoughts. Asterisk, you ungrateful child. Asterisk, her bedroom mirror was completely fogged, except for a perfectly clear, small handprint in the center. The house suddenly reeked of Grandma's cloying rose perfume. Sarah, too, began to change. She became withdrawn, spending hours in Grandma's old study, poring over dusty journals. She'd hum Grandma's favorite lullaby, a tune Emma found increasingly unsettling. The house seemed to feed on their unease, growing colder, darker. One afternoon, while Emma was in the kitchen, a teacup on the counter slid off and shattered. There was no tremor, no bump, just a slow, deliberate push. Emma froze, a cold dread washing over her. She was not alone in this house. Emma started researching the house's history online, desperate for answers. Old newspaper clippings spoke of a tragedy decades ago. A young girl, Lily, vanished from the property, never found. Her grandmother had been a child then, living in the house. That night, Emma woke to her mother's screams from the attic. She rushed upstairs to find Sarah clutching her head, surrounded by dusty furniture. A music box, identical to one Emma remembered Grandma owning, was playing a distorted version of the lullaby, its lid snapping shut, crushing a spider mid-crawl. Emma found her mother sleepwalking again, this time to Grandma's old bedroom at 3 a.m. "She wants us to find it," Mom murmured, her eyes vacant, as she pressed her palms against a section of wallpaper until blood seeped from her nails. The wallpaper tore, revealing a dark void behind it. Behind the torn wallpaper lay a hidden compartment, smelling of damp earth and decay. Inside rested a porcelain doll, unsettlingly lifelike, with Grandma's exact face, right down to the mole above its lip. Its antique dress was stained brown, and still damp. Emma instinctively recoiled. The doll's eyes followed them. Emma tried to burn it in the fireplace, but the flames died instantly, as if choked by an unseen force. The doll's head turned with a sickening crack, its painted smile widening. "You'll respect your elders," Grandma's voice whispered, emanating from the doll's unmoving mouth. Mom started setting an extra place for the doll at meals, serving it tiny portions. "Grandma hates when you chew loudly," she'd scold Emma, her eyes fixed on the doll. Emma's food kept vanishing from her plate, except for the tiny, sharp teeth marks left in the butter. The doll became a constant, terrifying presence. It would appear in different rooms, always watching. Emma tried to hide it, lock it away, but it always returned, sometimes sitting on her pillow, sometimes perched on the bathtub edge, its gaze unwavering. One morning, Emma found her mother meticulously brushing the doll's hair. Sarah's hands trembled, and her face was gaunt. "She's so cold, Emma," she whispered. "She needs warmth." A strange, possessive glint was in her mother's eyes, a look Emma had never seen before. Emma woke with a gasp, the doll sitting heavily on her chest, its weight crushing her ribs. Its porcelain fingers dug into her cheeks, cold as grave dirt. "You have her eyes," it crooned, in Mom's voice, distorted and guttural. Downstairs, her mother was humming Grandma's lullaby, but the tune was off-key, a chilling dirge. Panic set in. Emma scrambled to Grandma's old photo albums. Flipping through yellowed pages, she found a disturbing pattern. Every generation, a child in the family disappeared around their 8th birthday. And in the background of each family photo, a faint, blurry image of the same porcelain doll. A faded newspaper clipping tucked into the last album confirmed her worst fears. Local girl Lily, age 8, vanishes from family home. Police suspect foul play. The date was decades ago, but the picture of Lily was unmistakable. She looked exactly like the doll. The truth slammed into Emma. The grandma they knew wasn't her biological grandmother. It was Lily, the spirit of the vanished child, trapped within the doll, possessing generation after generation of the family's women, seeking a new body to inhabit. Now it wanted Emma's mother, and Emma was next. The house itself seemed to turn against her. Thick, black fluid, smelling like embalming chemicals, began to bleed from the walls, oozing down like tears. Her mother, now a puppet of the doll, dragged Emma toward the attic, her joints moving with an unnatural jerky motion. Emma struggled, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The air grew thick with a cloying sweetness, the scent of decay mingling with Grandma's roses. They reached the attic door, which creaked open on its own, revealing a terrifying tableau. The attic was no longer an attic. It was a perfect, chilling replica of Grandma's funeral parlor, complete with a tiny, ornate coffin. The porcelain doll, now glowing with an eerie internal light, sat inside, its smile wider, more malevolent. Mom forced Emma's hand towards it. Every family needs an heir. The doll giggled, its voice a chorus of childish whispers. Emma's gaze fell on a dusty, antique fire poker leaning against the wall, a desperate surge of defiance. With a primal scream, she wrenched free from her mother's grip and swung the poker with all her might, aiming for the doll. The porcelain shattered. The doll screamed, a sound like breaking bones and tearing flesh, as thick, black ooze erupted from its fragments, splattering the room. Mom collapsed, her body convulsing, aging 50 years in seconds as the dark energy left her. The house shook violently, a tormented roar trapped within its walls. The black ooze receded, seeping back into the walls. The house fell silent, a profound, heavy silence. Emma rushed to her mother, who lay frail but breathing, the vacant look gone from her eyes. The nightmare was over, or so she hoped. 1 year later, Emma sold the house. It went for a ridiculously low price, but she didn't care. As the new owners, a young, oblivious couple, walked towards the front door, Emma glanced back. For a fleeting moment, she glimpsed a small figure waving from an attic window, wearing Mom's favorite dress. Emma and Sarah moved into a small, modern apartment, far from old houses and dark secrets. Sarah was recovering, though she often had nightmares she couldn't recall. Emma, however, remembered everything. One rainy morning, as Emma was getting ready for school, her bathroom mirror fogged unexpectedly. Wiping it revealed fresh writing, not carved, but appearing as if by magic. Asterisk family is forever. Asterisk her reflection winked back at her. With Grandma's eyes, the lullaby, a faint echo, seemed to drift from the apartment's walls. Emma smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Some inheritances, it seemed, could never